Hello, welcome. I am the Film Addict, and I have returned. Yes, it is. I am back, and it's been a while since I've done a film review. So I think I'm going to start off with this movie that that I've watched twice already. Both times since I've seen it, it has been captivating to watch. When 12, not 12, no, when 12 Years a Slave came out, Steve McQueen, I became very interested in him as a director and as as a person. I wanted to know more about him. When found out that he was, that he's British, I thought that was pretty strange. Him being an African American. Not many African American directors can be British or are born in Britain, so that's a very interesting, combo that he's got there. And I looked in his filmography, and he's been a British film school where he's made short films, nothing mainstream, and then in 2008 he came out with his very first movie, Hunger. Now, this movie is fantastic. Cinematically speaking, it is very beautiful to watch. It's 96, it's 94, 96 minutes. Yeah, 96 minutes long. But and very little dialogue in this film. Very small dialogue. Background takes place in 1981 in the Maze prison in Northern Ireland during the IRA conflict, people blowing each other up. Very important, but a very not so great time for both countries. So Michael Fassbender in this movie, he plays Bobby Sands, who is an Irish Republican soldier during that time who was being held prisoner in the Maze prisons with his fellow brothers. And it was around this time he decides to, as a way to gain attention for Irish independence, to get people to be on his side on the issue and be against Britain, is to go on a hunger strike. Um, because in the prison, in the Maze prison, the H blocks, the British government. The British government at that time, when they arrested these Irish Republican soldiers, didn't deem them as political prisoners. Instead, they only labeled them as actual criminals, same in line as murderers and rapists and sex offenders and all the but not political prisoners, which they most definitely were, since they were, from Ireland trying to fight against a government that was being imposed onto their country, and they were fighting. These people were fighting for their independence, just like America did back in the 1700s. So, in order to get the government to label them as political prisoners again, is to go on this hunger strike. But it doesn't start off with the hunger strike. No, in the beginning we get not an introduction to Michael Fassbender as main character Bobby Sands. We don't get to see Bobby Sands until like the sixth scene of the movie. The beginning is very cinematically is fantastic. I've said that already. But I still think it is, because we start off the film with getting two different perspectives. One of a British officer, coming in to the prison, and him going through the daily routine, and the movie's not just one-sided. It shows both sides of Britain and Irish sides of the story. The British side being one of the police guards leaving his house and checking up and down his street for any Irish soldiers, mercenaries, to come in and kill him. And then before he goes to work, he looks underneath his car and to check for bombs. So it really demonstrates the pressure and the fear of being killed when you go into your work. And the guy that got to play that character did a fantastic job. And we see him go into the prison, and then later we see his knuckle bruised up, and he's washing his knuckle, and it's a fresh wound, and that can only indicate that he just beat up a prisoner. and it shows the aftermath of him. You know, a great still shot of him leaning against a brick wall, smoking a cigarette. You know, just thinking about the events that just transpired. It's just a great moment of isolation within himself, and I love Steve McQueen's style of filming when like it's in that scene he has a cigarette in his hand and it does a close up of his wound on his knuckle as he's holding the cigarette to his mouth, and we see it's snowing outside, so we see one little snowflake land on his knuckle, and Steve McQueen keeps on that snowflake for like a couple seconds, just so it melts, just to give the impression that the wound is still fresh and it's still warm from beating a prisoner's head in. So filming style was fantastic, was great. Second perspective in the intro of the movie is a prisoner's perspective of coming into this prison, and we get one of the we get a recent prisoner coming in, and he is in the room in a room with with a couple of officers when they're writing down information about him. It's where he turns in his clothes, and he doesn't want to take off his clothes because he sees himself as a political prisoner. He wants to be treated as as a person. He wants to wear his regular clothes, but no word from any of these British officers. They just look at him as like, no, we're not going to do that. We're not going to do that at all. Can you just take off your shit, please? And he gets the gist of that message, and he slowly takes his clothes off bit by bit. It's like compromise. He's going through compromises in his head a bit. He's just like, okay, I'll take off my my coat and my shirt, and and he stands there for a second. It's like, that's enough. But then he just goes, I guess it's not. And so he takes his pants off and his underwear, and then he gets shoved into one of the prisons. So into one of the cells. Now that was the introduction. Now we get to the part where he's adapting to prison life. He goes into a cell. The cell is covered in feces. This was during a no wash blanket protest by the prisoners because they refuse to wash themselves or take any blankets from any of the British guards. And his cellmate, he's got a beard, long hair, and walls. All four walls of the prison are completely covered in feces. And it just shows you know, the lengths that they're willing to go for this protest because this means so much to them. And we get a shot of the new prisoner, going like up against the window of the prison, and there's a hole in the window, and he's sticking his arm out, and then we see a fly, and it's a very interesting choice by Steve McQueen to show this segment because the fly, he's like trying to get the fly, to fucking get on his hand and everything, on his finger, and so he can play around with it. And it's weird. Well, not weird. Actually, it's not that weird. But it's a great, it's a pretty good camera, shot where he's on that, he's doing the camera's a close up on his hand with the fly, for a good while. Not that long, obviously, like a minute and a half tops. But still, for a camera to be on one thing for that long is pretty interesting to me, and it's interesting because it's his, thought of grasping this fly has freedom, more freedom than I do, and it's a weird realization that while you're watching this film, and then they all of a sudden we get, so let's skip all this and go to Michael Fassbender's performance. Michael Fassbender is a fantastic actor. Like literally, he's one of the best actors right now, in my honest opinion. Like, working today, that is. He is one of the greatest actors working on the scene today, because he just gets so into the role that it feels like he just loses himself completely. And that's all I can really hope to expect from a great actor like Michael Fassbender. And his interpretation of Bobby Sands, I've read in interviews with him, he says that he didn't want to try to be exactly like Bobby Sands. He wanted to interpret Bobby Sands like how he would interpret it. And it was a good move for McQueen to, not be anal about, getting the character right, and just letting Michael Fassbender work with the character, and let him bring his own contribution to the film. And it really works out. It's fantastic. It's beautiful. It's a beautiful performance. Um, and we get the best part of the peak of the film. The peak of the film is this 27-minute segment of the film where Bobby Sands and a priest for talk about the morality of going on this hunger strike that Bobby Sands wants to go on. And they talk about, is it suicide? What will your family, think? How would they react to this, this drastic measure of starving yourself to death in order to prove a point? And another section of the conversation is, will the British government even, care that you're dead? How um, would they give in, or would they just let all of you die, and nothing will be accomplished, or would they actually listen and give in to the demands? And great conversation. This 27 minute movie scene, but 22 minutes of the 27 minutes is dedicated to just the frame of the two of them sitting at a table, different ends. Camera doesn't move at all. It's all dialogue. It's all perfectly done. It's just you're not part of the conversation. You're just you're witnessing the conversation happening. And Steve McQueen, my God, he makes great cinematic decisions. And like, this is the scene with the most dialogue in it, and it's beautiful. Liam Cunningham, I think. Uh, yeah, Liam Cunningham plays the priest. He does a wonderful job with his role, even though small as it is. And uh, and then the 22 minutes, no dialogue, nothing happening, just all talking. Great lines, written by who wrote this fucking thing? Uh, written by Edna Wass and Steve McQueen. So they were able to make a conversation seem normal and very deep and thoughtful and provocative. And kudos to the writer and director for that, and kudos to the actors for getting it completely right. In order for them to accomplish that scene together, Fassbender and Cunningham, they actually moved in together and worked at that scene 15 times a day until they got it right. Steve McQueen would come visit and give them notes, and of course they would give each other notes to give each other advice on how to improve, or things to work on, little chinks. And you can see the work. It really pays off because it is a great scene. And the rest of the movie, there is barely any dialogue at all. It's all visual, and I think it is better for it that way. It's better to actually see events going on than having it explained to you. And Steve McQueen films it in such a way that it makes you, want to see more. It doesn't make you bored. It makes you interested. You get enveloped in the story, and the cinematography is very excellent. Is really excellent. Great colors. Just an overall great film. Honestly, I think this is like Steve McQueen's best movie, and that's saying a lot considering that he did Shame and 12 Years a Slave, and also since he only did 3 movies so far with his professional career. Um, since he's come on the scene, he's only done 3 films: Hunger, Shame, and 12 Years a Slave. It honestly makes me can't wait to see more of what he has to give, because honestly, I just enjoy his work so much. It's more art. It's really more art. It is art. His movies are art. Like, he approaches them with such professionalism, such mantra, such pizzazz, that I when I said that he's the next Kubrick, he is the next Kubrick. I can just see the influence almost with his cinematography style. And it's Hunger. It's a great film. I don't want to give away the ending, but Michael Fassbender doesn't say a single, almost doesn't almost say a single word for the rest of the film, and the last scene, he just it's not in his body movements or his acting, it's in his face. Like, his facial performances are astounding, like, they're gratifying, and you see that. I'm not, no spoiler, but when you see that last scene with the close up on his face, you feel like that's it. It's perfection. It is acting perfection. One of Michael Fassbender's, his best movie, and that's saying a lot. That's also saying a lot, considering that he's done Inglourious Basterds, 12 Years in Shame, and um, a bunch of other films, The Counselor, and he was also in Jonah Hex. I don't know why. But this is one of his. I would say I would put this as one of his best films, and I definitely would put this as Steve McQueen's best movie. It would be Hunger, 12 Years a Slave, and Shame, but none of them are like bad movies. They're all like excellent and almost 100%. On a scale of 0 to 100, they're almost like 100%. Um, but Hunger is, it goes above and beyond the Call of Duty of trying to make, a biographical movie. It goes just beyond its expectations, and it really just blew me away. So, yeah, Hunger, I would give it a 10 out of 10. I cannot really find anything really bad about this movie. I just can't. The writing is great. The way it's shot is fantastic. Directing is very well done. The acting is spot on. So it's really hard to, pick out pieces that I didn't like about this movie. So, 10 out of 10, that's my review. Hunger. Go check it out. Steve McQueen, his first movie. Alright, I am the Film Addict, and I shall see you next time.